Hello everyone. So hopefully we are now live. So it'll be quite useful to check that, make sure it is all working. It should be. But I'm always a little concerned about that. I've had to create a new thing for this because this is the first time we're doing the live Ret Q&A or discussion, whatever, on YouTube, which means I had to create a new thing with the new chat box. Well, okay, people will be able to see comments, but not who they're by. This is not helpful. I knew that it will go wrong, but hello. Sorry, I'm just trying to find one last thing. I've uploaded a load of images that we may need to use to discuss whatever you want to discuss. But there's one last minute thing. Because there were a load of changes, basically. Blizzard yesterday threw out a load of changes in terms of enchant and Azerite trait tuning. It's still obviously not done. They've not finished, but there were some changes, which has changed the landscape a little. But where is it? Because I've been trying out. Well, anyone watching it back on YouTube on a PC will be able to see, because you'll see the chat as it is on YouTube, where it looks fine. But anyone trying to watch on a mobile will struggle. Well, when I say struggle, I mean it'll be impossible because it's black writing on a black background by the looks of it. But it doesn't matter what I do to change it, it ignores me completely. Do I think Ret will be nerfed too much after... no, see, again, I don't think so. The problem is that in terms of the damage you're able to do, they will balance it for patchwork type situations. But how much damage you can do on an individual fight depends on a number of things. For example, if it's a fight where there's a lot of movement, someone who leaves dots on a mob and has to do a lot of movement, for example, well, that damage is still ticking while they've moved away from it. Or if they've got some sort of range things there. Vectis, we can have a look at Vectis if you like, because I made a video of one pull of each of the bosses that we did last night. Vectis is unpleasant when you have to move. When you don't have to move, then of course it's ideal for a Ret Paladin, because it's just stand still, maybe move a couple of steps to the left now and then, and otherwise smash the hell out of everything. So for most of the time it was perfect. Sorry, I'm just gonna hide this because we don't need it yet. How does Ret feel pace-wise at 120? Anyone who watched me stream last night, I was not having fun. So I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, I even technically cheated last night, because the gear I have, right, so I've got a Paladin. In fact, I can show you. Where is it? I made this screenshot actually for the Indomitable Justice trait, which has been buffed a bit, but never mind that. So this is my... There's my Ashbringer pointer. This is my character on the beta at the moment. 320 item level. But if you look here, 6% haste. Now, just to let you know what 320 item level is. Normal raid Uldir will drop 355. You need to be able to queue up for heroic dungeons. You need 305 gear, so it's significantly above. So you'll get 320 item level gear once you've run a few heroic dungeons. So in other words, you're on your way. You're not quite ready for the Uldir raid. You'll be better than that for the Uldir raid, but nonetheless, that's not a freshly dinged character. Now, I do have to point out that virtually none of that gear has haste on it, because I've been really unlucky with the gear I've got on that character. But I also haven't farmed the hell out of beta. So, don't imagine that I've been prioritizing haste pieces there. I haven't been able to get any haste pieces. So it will be more than that. It will be more. So what I did for the raid test last night, because I know that it scales all your gear up, I put in some lower item level pieces with haste on, just to bung my haste up a bit. and I got my haste to about 12%, so double that. So I was basically raiding last night with 12%, and it didn't feel great still. Like, I mean, admittedly, for me, it's really, there's a huge juxtaposition, because on live now, I have about 40% haste, so I've got a silly amount of haste at the moment. Actually, it's come down a little bit. With Inquisition up. Whereas the what am I talking about? Oh yeah. So when you go from like having 40% haste to down to that, and also bear in mind I'm using Inquisition, so I've got an extra 7% haste on top of that. Really, what are the ratings for those? I can't remember. So you're 3/4, you've got 13%. Yeah, well, this is an issue. It's not easy to find stuff with haste on it. I mean, in this set, the only things that have haste on it, I think the cloak has haste on it, and the weapon, and that's it. Those are the only pieces I am wearing with haste on. Obviously, the neck. The neck has all its secondary stats. You know, you don't have to rely on luck there. But you can see how little farming I've done on this character. You know, the problem is I made so many characters I didn't focus on any one. It's only got 14 level neck, which is, you know, because I didn't do a lot of farming on it. So you had... Oh, you don't know. I don't know without checking what it was. Any ideas of who I'm raiding with? No. I'm already Horde, but I'm not... Who is this? God almighty, I can't see the bloody names of this. Right. I'm not raiding. I'm not mythic raiding. I'm already Horde. Look, this is... Okay, this is on beta, but the reason this is the one I'm doing my raid testing with is because I'm in a Horde guild. But anyway. But yeah, we're not going to have good haste. Compared to Legion... But then also think about this. In WoD, for all the way through WoD, for all the progress anyway, I had about 5% haste. But 5% haste for WoD didn't half seem a lot better than 10% haste in BFA. It doesn't feel good for me. It's a feeling. The thing is, though, because we've got that more downtime, our abilities are hitting harder. We're still doing plenty of damage. It just doesn't feel nice. Or it feels different. Maybe you get used to it. I don't know. You stacked 3 Azerite trait that boosts haste per HP spent. Well, they are tuning them all at the moment. At the moment, the one that's looking too good is Expurgation, but they are going to be nerfing that as well. So they're going to be nerfing some, buffing others. You know, they all should work out to be decent, is the plan anyway. Preach said the same thing about his raid testing video. Said it was annoying. What, the downtime? Yeah. I mean, it's a specific philosophy they have. It's what it is. I mean, you know, anything when you... I'm not saying I think it's a good... They've got a good reason for it. But at the same time, whenever you change anything about it, obviously you've got... there's going to be a lot of people not liking it. Because they did like it before. So you've got something that people like, and then you change it. Obviously, some people are going to be annoyed. But it might be one of these things, Ivor, that can, you know, you can get used to. But it's going to take me a lot of getting used to after Legion. There will be some niche gear that boosts your haste on random PPM. Yeah, I hate that. I absolutely hate it. I detest random haste because it disrupts the flow. Because all of a sudden it's like, oh, faster rotation now. Oh, slower rotation. Faster rotation, slower rotation. I hate it. Like, heroism, I hate heroism. But obviously, at least with heroism, you know when it's coming. Because you'll make sure you know from the raid leader, when are we using heroism, so that you can plan for it. When it's random, you can't. You just randomly go in faster, rotate slower, and it messes with your muscle memory. Just test it. And this is the reason why I'm just going to get rid of this. The reason why I suddenly just put this up. So I was hoping that Torrent of Elements, which is a weapon enchant, would be the one to go for. Unfortunately, they've nerfed it. So it may not be. It might be that we want the haste proc one, or we might want the crit proc one. Crit proc ones I'm less bothered about. I mean, you know, the problem with random proc ones is you can never plan for them. That's the main downside to it. But anyway, I'm going to be missing comments here at this rate. Hold on. You'll be making lots of engineering helms till you get the right stats. Why? Why would you make an engineering helm? It's an Azerite slot. Go blacksmithing. You can make, with blacksmithing, you can make yourself legs and a waist, a belt. They don't block up Azerite things. Engineering goggles, this is the first expansion where surely to goodness they're going to be basically useless. Inquisition smooths things out a bit haste-wise. Yeah, I mean, this is me. Last night, I was super annoyed at the, you know, how slow it was compared to live. I'll get used to it, I'm sure I will. But for now, and that's with Inquisition. There is no way I would not use Inquisition at the moment. Even though Divine Purpose might well seem better at level cap. I hope not. The engineering helm is is it Azerite armor? All right, fine. Okay then. All right. But blacksmithing can make two things: legs and waist. Maybe you should have blacksmithing and engineering then. Oh no, there is still a reason why you shouldn't use the engineering one. I've just thought of it. Champions of Azeroth. Champions of Azeroth is the rep that you are going to be farming, and you're going to be buying contracts from scribes so that you can get your exalted in that, because the quartermaster, which is basically Magni, he sells you an Azerite helm, good one. So you still might not want engineering for it, but I suppose it can get better with the raid stuff that drops. So you still might not want it. I haven't looked at that too carefully though, but I do know that Champions of Azeroth rep gives you an Azerite helm. So, last week I mentioned a possible AoE change. No, I can't spill the beans. They haven't done it yet. I'm also a little bit concerned after last night's raid testing that they might not, because do you know what? I didn't think the AoE was... It was very variable. I have to say that. It was a bit variable. But I don't know that it's necessarily really bad. I don't think the AoE is necessarily really bad. So they might not do it. But no, I can't, because they get really upset when I say things I shouldn't. If they do it, then you'll see what it is. And if they don't, my fear is over next week I've basically got to put together the Ret Essentials guide. That's it. There is no rumour. The Ret Essentials guide, and my fear is I'll put it all together, publish it, and then they put the change in, and then I have to trash it, edit it, and put it back up again with the change, because it's fundamental. It's a fundamental change. It's an easy change to make, but it is one that makes a baseline ability fundamentally different. It's nothing to do with Divine Storm. They can't do anything with Divine Storm. They can't buff Divine Storm, because otherwise you'll end up being able to use it on 2 targets, and they've said that they're not having 2-target cleave. It's not Consecration going baseline. That would be a silly idea. If Consecration solved the problem, you could just take Consecration, which you can anyway. That wouldn't help. Consecration doesn't help anything. But anyway. So it's not that. It's an existing baseline ability that they might change, but the fact that they might do it and still haven't done it makes me think that they're trying to resist it. But you can't find out, because I get moaned at. And then, yeah. So, anyway. But I don't think the AoE is that bad. My personal experience is not that it's that bad. We get on a horse in battle and it kicks everything. No, don't give them ideas. Jesus Christ, don't give them ideas like that. Oh my God. You know they will do it. We don't need that. No. You're slightly annoyed that the good craftable gear is bop now. Well, sorry, that's the way it is. They want it's probably part of. See, the thing is, it's part of professions, isn't it? They wanted to make professions relevant. They tried making professions relevant in Legion by doing the quests to make them more exciting, but it just made them tedious. So now they've got rid of the quests and they've gone, okay, well we'll allow you to make really good gear, but it's only for you, which is actually fine. I'm okay with that. I'm alright with that. It suits me anyway, because on my paladin I'm an enchanter and blacksmith, so that's that's ideal. If it wasn't bop and needing raid drops, they wouldn't let it exist. Well, yes, people would once they'd got enough of the stuff off the bosses to equip themselves. Yes, they'd be able to sell it to others. But actually, is that a bad thing? Would that be a bad thing? I don't think that would be a bad thing. You know, giving raiders something for which that they can sell. But obviously, okay. But I mean, the way it is, I'm all right with. I don't have any personal issues with. I mean, now that I'm sort of going to be a little bit more casual in BFA, I have started to think my strategy. I may not level my paladin first, or well, at least not go straight into leveling my paladin, because what if instead I level up my Death Knight, who's a miner and herber, get a load of materials, and then pass those on to my hunter, who can make the experience gems and the Champions of Azeroth contracts and stick them on the auction house and make a killing. Mythic eye level gear on the market. Well, yeah, maybe. But the thing is, when we're going to start off with a load of, like, the world BOE is a 350 item level anyway. That's only 5 item levels less than normal Uldia stuff. So you're going to be, like you have for the last few expansions, you're going to be buying that stuff anyway, if you've got the gold for it. The drops don't have to come from Mythic, but you get more of them in Mythic, I think. So Mythic Raiders would be a... Plus Mythic... Yeah. Also, do they... If you do it on Heroic and Mythic, would you still get the drops both times? I'm not actually sure about that. Don't know about that. You got a 250 350, do you mean? BOE weapon. Yeah, I did get a 350 BOE. It wasn't any use to the character that got it. It was a leather belt or something. But yeah, as soon as I got it, I thought, oh shit. I've used up all my luck. I'm not going to get anything when it goes live now. Terrible. Absolutely dreadful. But, you know, there you go. But, where am I trying to find something? Oh no, what have I done? What have I done? Oh no, it's okay. But yeah, I mean, either way, what we're going to be wanting to do is... See, there's people in my guild last night, they're already talking about changing professions so that they have a profession that allows them to craft their armor type. Because, I mean, the benefit now is the way they've changed professions is... It all starts from scratch anyway. Let's say you've got a character that's a leather worker, but your main character uses leather, but they're not a leather worker. You don't lose anything by doing leather working on them because it's all reset. There's no benefit in having someone who's got max level leather working up to and including Legion being the leather worker in BFA. Do you need your alts at 120 to make stuff for your raid? To a certain extent you can park and craft, yeah. Like that's what I mean. All the quests to get stuff from Legion have gone. However, do bear in mind that to get the rank, because the ranks are still in there, so to get the rank 2 and 3 stuff, and some of the patterns, you are going to have to basically do stuff with them. But there's a lot of good stuff that, yeah, you could just park and feed them materials and they'll be able to do. So the experience gems and the contracts, because they're going to earn so much gold to begin with, it sort of doesn't matter. You'll be doing it at rank 1, I guess. Because they'll sell for so much, I imagine. I'm not very good at playing the market, so I'm not an expert on these things. But I would strongly imagine that contracts and experience gems are going to sell like really quickly. You need those. You need to belt those out in the first few hours, don't you? So that's why I'm thinking of just going on my Death Knight to begin with. You know, mining ore and herbs. Feed them to my hunter, who's a scribe and a jewel crafter. Make the experience gems. Make the contracts. Bung them on the auction house. Then maybe go on my paladin. What's my view over all of this pre-patch and the quests that are in it? In terms of storyline, is it the best one ever? I can't speak for pre-Cataclysm because I wasn't playing the game with the pre-Cataclysm patch, so I can't speak for that. But in terms of all other expansions, it obviously has the best story because because that's all it is. It's story stuff. All of the other expansions, though, used to have content that you could do regularly, though. That's what's missing from this one, like the invasions and stuff like that. It's more comprehensive, shall we say. Whether it's better is another matter, because there is a bit of an issue with the story not really making a lot of sense. You know, some poor story writing. But the crafting can be maxed at 110. But yeah, there are, as I say, there are some recipe. It's more the ranks, getting rank 2s and 3s and stuff, because you need rep for those, for some of them, and other ones like drop elsewhere. Expurgation will not survive as the OP trait. Certainly not. It definitely won't. It's going to be nerfed. They just haven't finished it yet. They've only just started the tuning really yesterday. There is still more tuning to be done on them. The problem is that expurgation in its current form is silly overpowered. They can't allow it to be like that. They probably shouldn't even have a trait like that, to be honest. But they're certainly not going to leave it like it is. There's a benefit to keeping a gather at 110, for the legendaries and stuff like that. Yes, that is an excellent point, yeah, because if you're in really good gear and you've got legendaries and stuff like that, then... for now, anyway... Obviously, once you get to a point later on in the expansion when you have flying, different matter. But yeah, for now, there is definitely an argument, I suppose. I mean, I'm not going to min-max it to that extent. But yes, you're certainly going to get your best out of, the early levels when your gear's... Actually, the gear on my DK ain't that great, but it's not terrible. And I am going to feed it legendaries. The thing is as well, you don't really want a gathering. If you want to min-max it again, this is for min-maxing purposes. I don't think you really want a gathering profession on your main. Because let's say you're a leather user and you might go, well, I'd be leather worker and skinner. I think you're still better off having something like enchanting or tailoring. Because remember, you can break down the stuff you craft in the scrap bot thing, and you can get some of the bot materials from that for crafting the good gear. So it's better to have 2 crafting professions. Relentless Inquisitor. I don't see any trait as being top dog. I think they're going to do a reasonable job of balancing them. Obviously, there may be some that are better in certain situations. Relentless Inquisitor has been buffed a bit. I mean, that's where... Hold on, where's it? That's why I used that thing, but I've forgotten where it is now. Oh, there it... Oh, no. Let's have a look. Hold on. Skeletor did some sims, but obviously bear in mind that these aren't finished tuning yet. So Relentless Inquisitor obviously is quite high up now. But then there's other ones that are really low. They're basically gonna buff a load of the ones. You know, where's my pointer? I wish I could get the cursor to work on this thing. They're gonna buff all this lot. They're gonna nerf the very top ones there, and it'll probably finish up round about there-ish. So, you never know. You can never say. But what are the XP rates? What do you mean XP rates? Did I move all my 110s to Horde? No, thank God. How expensive would that have been? I hadn't decided which ones I wanted. Because obviously when you change realm and faction, it's very expensive. And I was umming and ahhing about which ones I wanted. And although I've semi-decided, or I've at least decided on 2 of them, because I knew that I didn't have to worry about which one for these ones for professions. Because even though I talk about my Death Knight being a miner and herber, I could just get mining and herbing on a different character. That would make no difference. But and I might still think to myself, well, which class that I have at 110 is going to be better as a miner and herber? Because maybe it's still not a Death Knight. Maybe it's something else. Oh, do they still give XP for mining nodes? Yes, they do. No, they still do that. Do I think there will be a lot of nuance in keeping old Azerite armor with all traits and new ones with only few or none? Yes, there will be an issue. Like, take for example, let's get rid of this and let's put my character back up again. So take this character for example. This is my item level 321. So this obviously, realistically, you'd never find yourself in this position. But this helm, where's my pointer? Well, you know where the helm is, don't you? The helm is actually from Uldia Normal. But I don't have any traits active on it because my neck isn't high enough level to activate any of them. So realistically, I would use a lower item level helm where I could activate the traits on it, like a dungeon helm. So yeah, there will be a bit of that. And the answer in terms of knowing what's actually going to be better for you is, of course, sim it. So yes, there will be an issue of if you get, let's say you get really lucky, you know, first week of Mythic opens, you get a helm of Mythic Mother, but it's like, oh, but I can't, you know, activate the last trait yet, but I can on my other one. Then, you know, there's a bit of an issue there. Druids are good for gathering, but the main benefit of druids will not come to the fore until we've got flying. And secondly, my druid isn't 110. And I'm not wasting a level boost on it because it wouldn't take me much to get it to level 110. I suppose I could do that before, but then its gear would be shit as well. Unless I did all the world quests. It's 10 days. I can't be asked. I've got Warhammer stuff to paint. So no, it's not going to be the druid. It's going to be something that is currently 110. So yeah, in terms of Azerite gear, there could well be a case for simming it to see whether it's worth taking or not, depending on what you're able to unlock. Wouldn't you get enough experience these days to ding while maxing professions? No. You don't get experience for anything other than gathering, and you don't get much experience for gathering. It's a token amount, really. You have a 340 Azerite piece that you can't use until Azerite level 18. Your 327 with mediocre mastery trait outdoes the 340 piece. Yeah, well, that's the sort of thing that can easily happen, yes, indeed. So that's what I mean. I mean, this helm I shouldn't actually be wearing. It's only because I'm not I used it because, actually, to be perfectly honest with you, I shouldn't have even used it in the raid last night, the raid testing. My other helm, because I couldn't even unlock all the traits in the raid test, because it only bungs your neck up to 20 there, which is only enough for the first 2. But I did anyway, because I thought, well, to hell with it. Do I think the Azerite armor and the neck was specifically designed for people to do all the content to stretch playtime before the next patch? I think everything that's in the game is designed to stretch content to the next patch. Yes, everything they do. Because the whole concept of artifact power in Legion is no different to in BFA. It's there to get you to do lots of content that you wouldn't ordinarily have done, and therefore feel like you've got lots of stuff to do, and therefore you should play at least every few days, and therefore it never enters your head, is it really worth me keeping the subscription up? That is the whole point of artifact power. There is one guy who leveled his character with Herbin and mining, but it was not efficient, was it? It was very slow, very tedious. Do you need to unlock all the traits for it to be an upgrade or the first circle? That is something you need to sim. Because you've got to bear in mind, they also have stats on them. So obviously, if, like, let's say you can unlock all the traits on a leveling helm you had, or I could unlock the first ring of this raid helm. The raid helm might still win because it's so much higher item level. It'll be like 60 item level higher or something. Whereas if the item level gap is much smaller, then it's a different thing. So it's like anything. It's like Legion. BFA, in fact, is going to be even worse for it than Legion. You have to sim gear for upgrades. There are no, like, there's nothing else you can do. You have to sim it. There are people who've leveled with just gathering battle pets. Yes, there are. There's someone who leveled with a dance mat, but it wasn't something that you should follow. They did it because they thought it'd be cool. They didn't do it because they'd found a cunning way to level really quickly. They found the way to level the slowest way possible. Even slower than doing dungeons. Do I think the 11-week content cycle will continue? Well, they said that it was never a thing in Legion. It was just coincidence. Now, I don't believe it was just coincidence. So it might. But it might not be 11 weeks. It might be a different thing. But they did say that it was just coincidence and it wasn't intended. It's just that it happened too many times. It happened. What did it happen? Was it 5 times in a row? Which is more than... It might have even been 6, but I think it was 5. So, yeah. I'm not sure I believe in coincidences like that. How can they condone reforging as a system and then require people to externally say what? Well, they don't condone reforging. You mean the opposite. You mean condemn. Yes. Well, lots of people have said the same thing, but it doesn't really matter. Blizzard said they're not going to have reforging as a thing. So that's it. Blizzard hates it when someone says simmer. Well. Yeah, well, it's because they want item level to be the marker. But the problem is it isn't. You know, if all the gear in the game was just a primary stat and a small selection, like 2 secondary stats or something like that, something very basic and boring, then item level probably would be a pretty good marker. But as it is, it's not. Because you've got not only secondary stats that impact different classes and specs in different ways, but also, although primary stats should at least now always sim for more DPS than secondary stats for everyone, So item level should be a better indicator. But also you've got some gear that has other effects on it. Trinkets have other effects on it. Azerite pieces will have other effects on it. So this expansion is about hoarding Azerite. I don't think that will work. Or it shouldn't work. It might work though, actually, having said that. Because they have changed the way that the catch-up works a bit. But they were dead against hoarding artifact power in Legion. So I imagine they'll come up with something crafty to stop us hoarding artifact power in this expansion as well. They have to say it was coincidence, or every 11 weeks the forums will be, where's your content? Well, this is true. Because there did come a point, I think it was 7.3, where it stopped, didn't there? But yeah, you could argue BlizzCon got in the way there. Was that just after BlizzCon? Or BlizzCon was around about that time anyway. You were wondering if there was only that much power difference from a raid and dungeon gear. Item level gaps are usually not massive, aren't they? They're about 15. So between like different tiers of content. So you could easily have a dungeon Azerite piece that simmed better than your raid one, depending on what the level of your neck was. This is possible. So you will have to sim it. Shouldn't Blizzard add an in-game tool to sim your character? No. Because you got to think of it this way. Blizzard use simulation craft. Now, if Blizzard use simulation craft, what that means is they don't have their own. So, you know, and there must be some reason they don't have their own. Because you've got to bear in mind, the people who create simulation craft, they have to try and work out how abilities are actually working in the game. Blizzard will sometimes confirm some things. If they think, oh, I think this ability is working this way, can you confirm? Sometimes they will confirm it for them to help them out because they benefit from it as well. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll refuse to tell them. Whereas Blizzard, if they wanted to make their own simcraft, they could absolutely do that. But they don't. They've said many times, and many different game directors have said, they do not like people knowing how the game works. Ian Hazacostas has said it as well, most recently, during Warlords of Draenor. He said they do not like the fact that people understand how the game works. They're just not as opposed to it as they used to be, because there's a certain symbiosis has formed now between theory crafters who can let Blizzard know about certain things that are not going to work as they think they are, and, you know, and vice versa. But they still don't. They would rather we were all pig ignorant and we're not playing the game in a min-maxy way, because it means we beat the content too quickly. Given the skill gap is so small, does the item level gap have a greater impact than skill? Yes. That's basically the takeaway of what the theory crafters are saying. Yes. Because the gap... I mean, it's not like you can just smash your face into a keyboard and do as well as someone doing it properly. But what it's more like is a case of like for a Ret Paladin, you still want to be building and spending. You don't want to be using builders when you're capped on holy power. So we're still assuming some awareness. But what we mean is the difference between looking at your abilities and going, oh yeah, we can probably just do this, and doing it properly is not big enough. So yes, gear will be a bigger factor. Surely the next expansion has to see some sort of level squish. No, because they said, like Ian Hazacostas talked about level squish, didn't he? And he said, oh, you think the problems with the stat squish have been bad? You just wait to see what would happen if we had to level squish. So no, they won't do it. And it has, hasn't it? You know, the fact that the level squish that they did before did cause a lot of problems. They've done a level and item level squish this time round, and that has caused a lot of problems. So what they're saying, and I believe them, by the way, what they're saying is that a level squish would cause way more problems. In other words, they might be saying it might break the game for 3 months. So, and I don't understand the technical side of it, but if they really think it's the sort of thing that they cannot do, and you know, when they release it, they know things will be broken, but they won't be able to fix it in a reasonable amount of time, then obviously they're not going to do it. Blizzard would probably charge you for the sim. No, to be fair, Blizzard don't charge for, you know, they there's an awful lot of things they could charge for that they don't. I know they charge silly money for the realm transfers and stuff, and faction transfers, and that is ridiculous what they're doing. Sheer naked profiteering, sorry. But there's an awful lot of ways they could enhance their profits, and they don't do it. But they won't do it. They actively they like the idea that they have access to Simcraft without having to do much work for it. They have to do some work for it because they do have to have a bit of a dialogue with the people who put it together. But they don't have to have a lot of work put into it. But they don't like the fact that we have access to it. When BFA goes live, do you think one will still be able to spam Warfront? No. Warfronts aren't spammable. You can't spam them at all. The idea of Warfronts is it's a faction thing. Like, you've got to turn in stuff to be able to unlock the Warfront. And if the other faction gets there first, tough titty. And they do. So I think they said you might expect to be able to do about one a week or something like that. And it's not a set time or anything. So you can't spam them. You won't be able to do them to begin with. You have to turn in a load of resources, don't you? Well, I think what they said is you can expect them to be rough. I think it's a bit like the Mage Tower, in the, you know, the way you unlocked it when it was about, the way you unlocked it was based on player behaviour. But you can expect it to be roughly this frequently. When I said Mage Tower, of course, I referred to basically all the buildings, those 3 buildings on Broken Shore. Do I think Blizzard will ever add a damage meter to the default UI? No, I don't. There's some add-ons. Sometimes an add-on is really successful and everyone uses it, and Blizzard think to themselves, well, we might as well do something here. But there are certain things that have been... Damage meters have been popular since vanilla. The fact that Blizzard have not put one in now means they don't want us to know about it. And actually, I'd be with Blizzard on this one. The problem with damage meters is it encourages some people to play badly. And Blizzard use it. They absolutely use it. When they're designing some of their fights, they deliberately put in mechanics where you've got a choice. Either do a lot of good personal DPS or deal with the mechanic and beat the fight. And that, you know, pull, usually people are just focused on the damage meter. Now, if Blizzard put a damage meter in game, then they wouldn't be able to go, well, that's your fault for just, you know, whoring damage. Because they, at the moment, they can say that a damage meter is third-party software. It's got nothing to do with Blizzard. They allow it, but it's third-party software. And that's good because it does encourage degenerate gameplay. The fact that you have a damage meter. It is a tool. You can use it for sensible things. But by and large, it encourages degenerate play. And Blizzard shouldn't put it in the game. Do they have a plan for being AP cap yet? I have no idea. I have no clue whatsoever. But yeah. Oh, oh, sorry. Okay, when the war front's up, you can repeatedly do it, and each time get a 340 plus item. I don't know whether that's intended or whether that's part of the beta. That's the problem with that. I don't know if they've said anything. Because sometimes the way something is in a beta is there to test it. So it's not always exactly as it's intended for launch. Now, if they've said one way or the other, then fair enough, but I haven't seen it if they have. Do I think they're holding back the good traits for later raids? I think probably, yes. Or, well, not when I say later raids, I mean like the... Because someone did make a very good point that Uldir is the equivalent of Emerald Nightmare and a High Maul, which didn't have tier gear. Whereas the Ashara raid, which I still don't know the name of because they're saying nothing about, that would be the equivalent of like Nighthold and Blackrock Foundry, which did have tier gear. So it might well be that we get more interesting traits with those ones, yes. However, interesting traits doesn't always mean good traits. Some of them can be a pain in the ass. Like there's a Ret one that was data mined a while ago, and I don't know whether it's not in on any of the gear in BFA in terms of launch stuff, so it might come later or not at all. But what it did was it gave you a buff once your wings had dropped off. So if you use an Avenging Wrath or Crusade, once that had expired, you got another buff to your strength. Okay, but the amount of strength you got out, or it was some buff to power, I think it was strength, the amount you got out of it depended on how much damage you did during your wings. So the more damage you did, the closer you got to the cap of it. The problem with that is twofold. First of all, you obviously need to maximize your damage during wings. You would want to do that anyway. But second of all, you then have this extra window of time where you still have to be maximizing your damage because you've got this powerful buff. And it can end up being something like 40 plus seconds that you have to be completely maximizing your damage. Well, on some fights that's not feasible because there's too much movement involved. So you're going to be wasting damage with it. And it makes it quite difficult to sim for its effectiveness as well. Because a simple patchwork fight will say, oh yeah, this is the best trait, you should be using this. Whereas realistically, it might not be true. And it's tricky to be able to say. So let's have a look then. The way around leveling will be to introduce one main quest line that took you all the way from 1 to 100%. Yeah, a lot of people have said that. I've said that. I would certainly like that. I mean, I was playing Lord of the Rings Online earlier today. You can do that in that, for example. There's a major quest line that goes all the way through the game, following the story of the ring. Something like that would be ideal. I mean, okay, realistically, there's a few side quests you need to be doing as well. But yeah, something like that would be better. But the problem with that is it would need a coordinated story to go all the way through, and there isn't one. It's anachronistic, the different expansions stuff. They completely fouled it up with the 1 to 60 stuff in Cataclysm. Some people need to see their numbers to realise they are actually doing badly. Well, they can do that with logs. But the problem is, most people only look at the actual damage portion of it. That doesn't tell you how to improve. It doesn't even necessarily say if you're doing badly. Like the number of people that have asked me to look at logs, oh, it's like really low, just in terms of their percentiles on logs. And you have to point out, well, that's because your raid has a really crap kill time. The people with the top logs have much better kill times. So sometimes they're not doing anything wrong, but they get a low percentile. That's just the way it goes. I mean, the most extreme example I ever experienced with that is in Warlords of Draenor. So in the guild that I completed Siege of Orgrimmar with, we used a particular strategy on Iron Juggernaut, which meant me stomping on the mines, basically. So my damage, my percentiles were always very bad on that boss. Then I joined a different guild, and we'd finished it all, cleared, but the guild was sort of declining. So I joined another guild to raid for Mop. Do I mean Mop? No. That was mop. I mean wad. Sorry. And it was either the first week or the second week with them. I think it might have been my second week with them. Because they didn't require me to do that job, I got rank 1 on it. You know, and it's just, you've got to understand, percentiles vary on so many things. Why have Divine Judgment stacked 15 times? Because they want it to be better in AoE, but Divine Judgment is something that is going to need to be looked at some point. Divine Judgment is not working well at the moment, it has to be said. Now, there's different things they can do to it, but they will have to do something with it. Now, when they will do something about it, I don't know. It might be one of those things that gets put back to 8.1. It might not be a quick thing. It could be argued it won't be very high priority for them because we actually have... It's not like we have no decent talents on that row. We do. So it's not like there's a desperate need to fix Divine Judgment quickly. So that might get put on the back burner. Hold on, what am I missing? The first week or two of Legion after launch was heavy and exhausting. For me it was because of a few things. 1, I had to fit it around work. 2, I had to get 2 characters raid ready. And 3, there was a real pressure on completing certain bits of content before a reset because you could get an extra thing out of the reset. And it wasn't like previous expansions where it's level to level cap, do dungeons for gear, and then you're raid ready. Sometimes you did a bit of PvP, get a bit of PvP gear. This time round there was the mythic dungeons thrown in as well as all the artifact power farming, and basically doing all the content you could that would award legendaries. So, whereas this time round, 1, it comes out when I'm still on holiday. 2, I don't have to get a second character raid ready. 3, I don't have to get any characters mythic raid ready. Even though I will still basically do the same thing anyway. So we are. Split level, similar to the professions, level to 60 with abilities and talents, then you can level on whatever expansion you want. There's all sorts of things they could do to stop leveling being such a pain, but to still allow that content for people who like it. But they're not interested, so... In my opinion, would BFA at the start be more alt-friendly than Legion when it launched? Yes. But it's still not what I would describe as alt-friendly, because the whole way the game works now is not. So although it will be more alt-friendly than Legion, it will be less alt-friendly than every other expansion that came before it. DP needs to be baseline. No, it does not, and it's not going to be. Some people, you've got to bear in mind, some people don't like Divine Purpose, the actual play of it. So it absolutely does not need to be baseline. It's fine as a talent. You can just take it as a talent. It's not like Legion, where you wouldn't realistically take it because Crusade was the best in all situations. Divine Purpose is competitive in BFA. In fact, at the moment, it's looking like the better one to take. Have something like in Guitar Hero. Some people think it already is. Oh, but it's where you get numbers, you get phrases on screen like good one, well done. We always get stuff like that though. They keep trying to plug the making us feel special. You know. Do you know what happens to me every time I go to the Paladin Order Hall? Some suck up says something like, oh, do you think Thete's a demigod? Oh, I hear one time Thete killed 500 demons with one blow of his sword. Absolutely dreadful. Am I staying in... I'm not in RR Inc. anymore. I've moved ages ago. Well, a while ago. But I'm not going to be Mythic raiding. I did join a guild to Mythic raid in Legion, in BFA, sorry. And then I've decided I'm not going to Mythic raid anymore, so I've been a pain in the arse, I'm afraid. People griefing me the Paladin Hall. No, it's the NPCs trying to butter me up, trying to massage my ego, but it's just embarrassing. Are there any surprise nerfing you see coming? Obviously, see the thing is, we know that the relative strength of the Retribution Paladin is going to go down. Of course it is. But we don't know whether it's going to be a nerf to Rets or a buff to others. You know, because tuning for 120 hasn't happened. Even Blizzard said that they're not going to tune to 120 until the pre-patch is finished. That's when they do their tuning. At the moment, they're tuning for 110. Then they'll tune for 120. How would I change Divine Judgment? I don't know. I mean, there are... Okay, so one thing they could do, but I don't think they're thinking of this, is it has been suggested that it takes fewer stacks to max, but that each one increases it by a larger percentage. So that it also has some single target use. You know, that would... Oh, hello. What am I doing? That would be possible. There was something that they were thinking of, but I can't remember what it was. And even if I could, I probably couldn't say anyway. But they are gonna have to do something with it. Uther's Tomb. You saw those 4 pads around him. You've been trying to get some guild. What, you think something special is going to happen if you get a paladin standing on each one? Blizzard always like to have Ret mid-table because it's not a support class. It is the least support class of almost all classes now. It has no support elements. A support class would mean that it buffs others. Well, we've got Blessing of Wisdom. You know, a healer will be grateful for that. But that's it. That's our support. How good does Ret look compared to other DPS classes? Well, on a melee hating fight, you're up against a warrior who brings an attack power buff. You're up against a demon hunter that brings a spell damage debuff, and you're up against a monk who brings a physical damage debuff, and a rogue who is a rogue. Now, the demon hunter and the monk, of course, as well as the warrior, can all bring their stuff in the form of another role. So it is perfectly possible, for example, if you have a demon hunter and a warrior tank and a Mistweaver monk healer, that be fine. But otherwise, you're going to have to prioritise those things. Now, on a non-melee hating fight, where it's much more even, then we'll be okay. It's the same as anything else. Are you a good enough player in your raid guild to warrant your spot? In which case, you know, you will be as competitive as ever. But there's no free ride for Rets. There never is. The problem is that Blizzard... Like, they don't have a thing against... People always say, oh, they've got this thing against Paladins. They don't. But there is a thing with Paladins. The problem with Paladins, and in particular Ret Paladins, is they are stunningly popular. And they're stunningly popular for a number of reasons. One of which is lots of people, let's face it, like playing a Holy Warrior, which is what they are. So they're really, really popular. So if it's one thing to have a load of people play a Ret Paladin that wants to play a Ret Paladin, Blizzard sort of have to suck that up. But if they're ever perceived as being a particularly strong class, then the problem is that it might encourage Flavour of the Month hunters to play them. And that means you've got a load of people playing them, not because they really want to play a Ret Paladin, but because it's perceived as being super strong. Now, Blizzard obviously want to avoid that. So they will always err on the side of smack them down than leave them alone. That is why, for example, when it looked like... shit, I've forgotten the name of it. Convergence of Fates was looking really strong for us. they smashed it into the ground and made it basically useless, or virtually useless. You're under the impression that Ret AoE will in fact get some change that may equate to a buff. Yes, we've got Divine Storm now. What do you mean return of Divine Storm? You're trying to figure out why they tarted up his tomb. Well, yeah, I would like to know that too. But I think it's probably... It might be part of a redevelopment of the whole Lordaeron area. You know, it might be just a taste of things to come. Maybe over the course of the expansion, we'll see a complete redesign of Lordaeron. Now, quite why, story-wise, Uther's Tomb would be the first place to do up, I don't know. Is Ret mobility a problem? Yes. Ret mobility is not good. Mistweaver healer won't be great oftentimes because it's a debuff they apply to their target. Ah, yeah, but the debuff now lasts forever. Like, it used to last a certain amount of time, like a minute or something. Now, once you apply it, it lasts the whole fight. So even if you die, the debuff's still on the boss. So actually, Mistweaver should be fine for it. But I have no clue why Uther's Tomb got changed. No idea at all. Is it not fair to say that the hybrid classes... There are no hybrid classes. There have not been hybrid classes for nearly a decade now. They used to be, but they are no longer the thing. A hybrid class is one that, whilst in the role of DPS, could conceivably do some healing. We can't. Flash of Light is not anything that is going to be of any use, and all we lose is stupid amounts of DPS. The best you can say is that every now and then, maybe you can throw out a word of glory in an oh shit moment. But that is not support, and that is not hybridization. That is a one-time oh shit moment, maybe you can do something. And that is not worth a loss of DPS because it's almost never needed. And most of the time when you do it anyway, it's when the oh shit moment, that doesn't necessarily stop it being an oh shit moment. So you still got a fair chance of wiping anyway. What do you mean then? Because you said hybrid, but there is no hybrid class in the game. Use selfish healer, selfless healer, I think you mean. Although there is no selfless element to selfless healer now. There was, because the way it used to work is the extra buff to the healing only worked on another player, but it doesn't. Selfless healer does not allow snap healing as necessary. It's anyone who thinks that they've saved someone with it is deluding themselves. Even if you use lay on hands on, like let's say you have a tank who goes super low on health, and it's not a normal situation where they should go super low on health, and you throw out a lay on hands, even then, and it's a sensible thing to do in that situation, there's no guarantee you've saved them because the healers are on top of it. That's the thing. Healers, you're not a disciplined priest. If you can tank, heal, and DPS, you're a hybrid. But you can't tank, heal, and DPS. You can tank, heal, or DPS. You can do one of those three. You cannot do any combination of two of those three things at the same time. You know, if the boss smashes both of the tanks, I can't tank that boss. If the healers are all dead, I can't switch to healing mode and we're called, you know, me and an enhancement shaman and a feral druid. We can't all just switch to healer mode and keep it going. That doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. No one has decent heals and DPS spec. A well-timed flash of light cannot definitely save someone at all. You have no notion of that at all. Because if the healers are alive, then the healers are on it. If the healers are not alive, then all you're doing is delaying the inevitable. Your flash of light cannot even out-heal one hit from any ability that can kill someone in the game. You have the option of pretending that you're doing good. That's all Flash of Light has ever done in any aspects of the game. And because we used to have these arguments before Legion, and I challenged people to show me a log proving that they've saved someone, and no one was ever able to do it. No one was ever able. Now, as I say, lay on hands, sometimes you'll throw it out, but every time I throw a lay on hands out, even then, I do not know I've saved someone. Because for all I know, there was a heal going towards them, or someone used a damage reduction followed by a heal. I don't know. I've just done it just in case, because the last thing you want is to think to yourself, oh, that tank looks a bit low. Carry on DPSing, or they're dead, when you could have used a lay on hands. And you can use a lay on hands without even affecting your DPS, because it's one of the few things off the global cooldown for us. But you still can't know you've saved them, unless you check in the logs and you discover that no heal was headed their way. Holy Paladin can put out decent healer damage, but they're never going to compete with DPS. Ever. Like, all healers do damage when they're not healing, which actually I suppose makes it more interesting, because if that was the case when I used to be a Holy Paladin, I suppose I might have stayed. The problem with Holy Paladins back then was when there was nothing to heal, and as soon as you worked a fight out and you progressed on it, healing was like mindless, and it got boring. In LFR, right, these Rets, okay, what was their item level? Because quite frankly, if you're going to be talking about a mythic geared Retribution Paladin, yes, me as a mythic geared Retribution Paladin, I can tank in LFR. I've sometimes had to tank in LFR because I do too much threat, even before the threat change. We're talking about in sensible gear. In mythic, if I'm a mythic Paladin, in a mythic raid, I cannot tank a boss at all. I will not survive. I might survive one normal hit, and then I will be dead. Healing isn't just whack-a-mole. No, no, no. Good healers know who's going to be taking damage when, and they can triage. They know, especially in a fight that you've done a few times, they'll know who's likely to take damage that they shouldn't do. They'll know, you know, like you could have two people take a load of damage, lose half their health. You know that one of them is not going to take any more damage for about 10 seconds, but the other one is in a situation where they might, because they've got a dot on them or something like that, and you can work out which one you should be healing. I'm still talking about the role you pick, but you have two others there as well. But you don't. In the middle of a fight, if the tanks are dead, I cannot take over the tanking. That's all there is to it. If you're talking about the fact that I could choose to spec as a tank before the fight even started, then that's mindless. That's a stupid argument. I can't even begin to say how bad that argument is, because I'm not. I'm not tank spec'd when I'm DPSing. I'm DPS spec'd. Question was lost. Sorry, there might well be questions lost in chat. I apologise. Do I think the movement problems stem from Cavalier being on the same row as Unbreakable Spirit? No, I think the problems stem from the fact that all we have is Divine Steed. Cavalier adds an extra charge to it, but it's still like Divine Steed in itself is useful in certain situations. Like I'd have preferred it if we had Divine Steed as baseline. That's fine. That's okay. I'd have preferred it if we had something like not Pursuit of Justice. Shit. Oh no. It was like my favourite movement ability. I've completely forgotten it now. The one where you judge and you get a boost. What was it called? I've forgotten. But that's the one I'd have preferred. A little speed boost when you use Judgment. Because that way you can... Long Over the Law, thank you very much. Yes. God, I've got to forget that. Because that way, the benefit of that is if you have to get away really quickly, you've got your Divine Steed. But then you need to get back. So then you can judge... Well, Judgment's bound to be off cooldown then because you've had to move away from the boss for some reason. So you can just use that to give yourself a little boost back. And then you're okay. You know, I mean, it won't be as good as it used to be because Judgment's on a longer cooldown. But the fact that it allows you to move out for a mechanic and judge back in, rather than have to take Cavalier and move out. And then sometimes you can't even do that. Because sometimes you still have to run back in slowly because you might need to use your Divine Steed again or something. So now I'd have preferred... you know, Divine Steed as baseline, okay, but then there should be a better talent, a different talent, not just another charge of the same thing. That is what I would have preferred. Still, it could have been worse because initially they had... I don't even know what Gallant Steed would be. Is that a Diablo thing? They did have Blessing of Freedom as a longer cooldown and Divine. They were putting Divine Steed up to a minute recharge time, and then they reverted. They reverted the Blessing of Freedom one fairly quickly, and then the Divine Steed one eventually got reverted back. So it was all right. It was okay, but that was scary. Thinking that our movement speed was getting worse, which was already like the worst of everyone apart from a Death Knight. And now, arguably, is maybe Death Knights have got a slightly better one. I don't know. I'm not sure, actually. And also, our defensives got worse. Oh, it's a heart rate in the defering. Oh, okay. I don't know then. The Arator heroic leap thing. Well, yeah. Do you know what? This does my head in because I mean they talk about like leap and charge being warrior abilities, and all right, fine, they are. But in the there's never been a cinematic or an in-game like NPC event where warriors have ever done that. But Paladins have. Tyrion has used charge, and as you say there, Tyrallion has used like a heroic leap type thing. Bloody annoying it was as well when I used to have him as a follower, a bodyguard. He used to get into all sorts of trouble. Why does the Retribution passive exist? Because Chris Metzen thinks it's cool, is my understanding. And because Chris Metzen thinks it's cool, all they've been able to do is to nerf it and not actually get rid of it. That is the problem we have. So although Chris Metzen is worthy of a lot of like kind thoughts from the WoW community, Ret Paladins and people who enjoy player housing should temper that a little bit with the fact that he's not all great. It exists because they don't want Rets passing high on logs. Or maybe it exists because they don't want Rets thinking they're helping by throwing Selfless Healer about. Because after all, if you save someone's life, well, you've just missed out on some extra damage there, haven't you? 20% extra damage for 10 seconds. You know. Obviously, you still save the tanks. You're not going to help yourself if a tank dies. But if someone else dies, you're just thinking to yourself, they're about to die. I could use Lay on Hands. I'm just about to use Avenging Wrath, though. I couldn't half do with a 20% damage boost. I'll just leave it to the healers. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. Oh, he's dead. Oh, what a shame. Inspires yourself and nearby... Oh, sorry, I missed this. Oh, I've heard this one, actually. Oh, I know what you mean now. Sorry, I know what you mean. Inspire yourself and nearby allies while Divine Steed is active, granting 283 speed for 5 seconds. Yes, I remember that one. Yes, that is a useful one to get, if possible. Sod the others, though. I'm not using it as a utility cooldown. It'll be for when I need it. If anyone else happens to benefit from it, then that's fine. You would like to see an enhancement shaman have an off-tank talent. If anyone should be getting an off-tank talent, you would think it should be a warrior. Like they had gladiator spec, didn't they? At one point. The temperature is still too hot. I'm suffering for you. I put the lights on just for the sake of it. But it is cooler than it was a week and a half ago. But it is starting to get hotter again. You know, it was 27... Like, again, at midnight, it was about 27 degrees last night. And that's with windows open. This is the problem. It actually... This is how much it retains the heat, houses in this country. I've got window open there. I've got windows open on the other side in my bedroom, opposite side of the house. There should be a nice little through draft, but there isn't. And it will maintain, you know, the temperatures throughout the night. You've legitimately popped yours on Antorian High Command to pass higher. Popped what? Sorry. Hang on, what have I missed? Vanilla was absolutely fantastic. You could heal, DPS and tank all in the same spec. 10-10, 31 spec allowed you to do everything. Up until patch 1.9 when it became a bit iffier, but it was still doable. You could still do it. Just not as well, I would say. If it's not, well, it's not raining at the moment. Oh, you pop mines on the ground. Oh, that's naughty. No, I wouldn't ever do that. I would never do that. Actually, someone did that to me this week on Antorian High Command. There were, on the third boss, there were a couple of mines underneath the boss. I moved back, but obviously someone didn't, because they both went, but that was me dead. No cheat death anymore, of course. Maybe I should be using the cheat death breaker on. You can't lose too much damage. So, that was annoying. Maybe it was the other Paladin. Actually, I'm not sure he was in that fight. He may have been. Paladin passive, you draw the life force from all the names in fight. Well, do you know what? In Wrath of the Lich King, right at the start of Wrath of the Lich King, before I quit the game, I created like a mock Ash... Because, you know, at the time, we knew there was going to be a legendary weapon. We didn't know it was going to be Shadowmourne. I thought it might be Frostmourne itself. So I designed a version of Frostmourne which had a passive aura on it, which meant that it did constant ticking damage to all gnomes within 30 yards. I even suggested it to Blizzard, but I don't think they ever did it. Well, there's quite a few things that do still hit quite hard, but I mean, mine's... You're supposed to not pop any. You sort of get away with one now and then, but you're not really supposed to pop them, so... I mean, it's horrible for melee, admittedly, when you get a load in melee, but you're still supposed to move out of them. Do we know why they removed the buff for having both blessings given? No, I don't actually know why they gave it us for having the blessings in the first place. Really. I really don't know. other than to remind us to use them. But the thing is, Greater Blessing of Wisdom, you won't need a reminder to use it because a healer or an arcane mage will remind you. And Blessing of Kings, not really that useful. So you just stick it on yourself just in case, but other than that... Well, it was an artifact trait as well, but they could have made it a passive thing still, but I just don't. I didn't see the point in it as an artifact trait even. It was just annoying when you would sometimes put this. I mean, the reason why I stopped putting Blessing of Kings on like tanks, even though it doesn't, tanks don't notice anyway. It tickles. It's because you thought, well, you might as well. But I was used to like Brewmaster and Guardian Druids, and they keep changing spec to use like food tables, feasts. So then it kept dropping off them. So I thought, sod it, if you can't use it responsibly, you're not using it at all. They will never make gnomes be able to be paladins. Ian Hazakostas has said so. I've still got the recording that someone kindly linked to me. It's not happening. You like the blessing in WoD where you can give everyone the blessing to help them level. What? I don't remember a leveling blessing. You can be a gnome paladin in the culling of Stratholme. What? Can you? What? Are you sure about that? I don't remember that. Are you telling me that there is a race that can play a paladin that is turned into a gnome in the culling of Stratholme? Because I did not know this. What race gets turned into a gnome? Ah, well, when it comes to people fighting over your blessing, it's easy. Just ask the raid leader who should have it. There was a post on Icy Veins about Rets are going to get a nerf that affects both PV and PvP. Do I don't know what they are? Well, who posted on Icy? Anyone can post anywhere. Are you talking about some random person? Obviously, relatively speaking, Rets are clearly going to get a nerf because... Hold on, let me find... Hold on. Where's one of these videos that I haven't even used yet? So, Mithrax, if I just go to the end of it. Right? They can't allow this sort of... And this is a heavy movement fight as well. This is a heavy movement fight. They're not going to allow a pink bar, not just at the top, but way ahead at the top. Obviously, it was progress. A lot of people die in Retribution procs, blah, 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 blah. Sure. But even so, they're not going to allow that. Hang on a minute. Male Blood Elves. I'm going to have to test this out because if this is true, I am writing a very strongly worded letter of protest to Blizzard. How dare they? Why would Blood Elves be turned into a gnome? That makes no sense on any level. On any level. No sense at all. Like, Blood Elves came in at the same time as Draenei, so they could have made it Draenei. You know, they share more common ancestry with Night Elf, so it could have been Night Elf. No, it couldn't have been Night Elf, so no, it couldn't have been either of those. Sorry, I know what you're going to say. I've just thought about it. Sorry. Couldn't have been either Night Elf or Draenei, I grant you. Two before. But, alright, they should have just done it pot blank human, alright? Should have just been human. Shouldn't have been gnomes. There were no gnomes in Stratholme. Mithrax. It occurs to me... I don't think Mithrax is actually all that annoying, I have to say. I think Vectus is more annoying. Even though I still think Vectus will generally be okay. You know, but I don't think Mithrax is that. It's all right. You can be badly hit if you get the debuff, which means you have to move out, and you get spammed with it, which sometimes you will. All right, it's bad. It's bad for people who want to pass, but I don't think it's a terrible fight. Whenever Ret Paladin was top of charts in ARG, especially it was when people died. Well, of course. I mean, that's ultimately it. I mean, I remember streaming one time in Tuma Sargeras when we were on Sisters. And there was one time when it was utter carnage. Like, people were dying left, right and centre. But we still killed it, because, you know. And at the end of it, I put my percentiles up. And even though I was personally doing the same thing every fight, you could just see the percentile was way higher on that kill than it was on the previous ones. Even though I didn't have appreciably better gear. In fact, I might not have had better gear at all. And I was doing nothing different. Am I going Alliance now that I've quit Mythic Raiding? Well, I still need a guild that is going to allow me to do the things I want to do. But I would prefer it if that guild happened to be Alliance, yes. Mithrax is the penultimate fight indeed, yes. Your guild keeps your Ret Paladin in the team as a glorified mana battery. I don't think it's strong enough to be a mana battery. I mean, we're not talking like vanilla Shadow Priest, which literally were that. I suppose TBC as well, really. I am not going to do Culling of Strathdome as a Ret Paladin gnome, but I am going to investigate it because I'm not happy. I did not know this. But then again, I didn't do any Wrath content. No, that's a lie. Hang on a minute. I probably would have done Culling of Strathdome as a Blood Elf Paladin. Because, although I quit before Ulduar came out, I came back when my graphics card melted to join a friend's guild casually. And I rolled a Blood Elf Paladin. I don't remember being turned into a gnome. I need to try it out. Your first Mythic Kingaroth kill got you rank 4 when most of the raid had died. Well, this is quite common on Kingaroth, I suppose. But yeah. Did they die because you kept backing up into little orbs when you had wings up? Is that when they died? Actually, no, I don't suppose you did. You used wings on the ads, didn't you, really? Murloc stole your bicycle on your realm of recruiting. I like Murlocs. I'm not sure I'd want to be a part of anyone who said bad things about Murlocs. Now, I'll investigate later. I'm not saying I don't believe you. I just find it a shocking lapse on Blizzard's part if that's what they've done. Of course, that was in the days of Ghostcrawler. I wouldn't put any Paladin insult past him. You're struggling to keep playing Ret for BFA. You feel it's not that much different to Legion, feels boring. I don't agree. I think it's significantly better than Legion. But the utility is not as good for Mythic raiding specifically. And it doesn't have anything to help it in Mythic Plus dungeons. At the higher end, I mean, for everything else it'd be fine. But I actually think, I like it. You know, this is why I sent a whole box of muffins and cookies to the development team, the class development team, when they made all the changes that they made, because I thought it's fantastic. So I'm afraid, Christoph, that I don't know, because I personally do think it already is. Well, at least in terms of the Warcraft mold, I mean, I think that in general, the way classes work in WoW could be a lot better, but in terms of the World of Warcraft way, I think it's perfectly good. Have I considered making a community for my channel? Could use it for either Mythic Plus or raiding groups. No. I haven't considered it. Aren't they limited anyway? There's like limited numbers in them. What do I think is better? Hang on, in terms of what have I missed? Oh, what games? like Elder Scrolls Online, even though you've got that limited number of options of abilities to use, I think is better. Admittedly, at the top end, because of the animation cancelling, that's a big downside to it. But if you just had it so that you didn't have the weapon swapping and the animation cancelling, then I would much prefer ESOs, where you, on a fight-by-fight basis, choose which like 5 abilities you want, but you can pursue and have quite a lot of them, because then that allows you to properly customize. That I quite like. There's also times in World of Warcraft where I would say it was better. I would say, although Warlords of Draenor did have a couple of aspects of it which were not good, I would say that on balance, Warlords of Draenor and even Mists of Pandaria Ret was better. I think I would say. But I think it's a lot better than Legion. You like Ret for BFA, you're just worried about the pace. It will be the same, yeah. I mean, you could argue Rets are going to... Suffer may not be the right word, because there are certain advantages in having more downtime, which means you're not as heavily punished when you've got movement to do. But that being said, Rets have always been a very, very fast-paced spec. So slowing it down is more noticeable, I think. Blessing and Wisdom 2 made your Paladin when healing go from 800k HPS to 1000 HPS. Yeah, Blessing of Wisdom is useful for a healer in that situation, but the problem is it's a very specific situation when you've got to think to yourself, is it important enough to bring that class? And because you could think to yourself, if it doesn't end up being necessary, then it isn't worth it. Or if you could bring another healer because the DPS isn't that tight, then again, it wouldn't be that important. I mean, on a very tight DPS fight, then it becomes more useful, because if it allows you to drop a healer for a DPS, then yes. But if it's not, there's a lot of fights that aren't really tight on the DPS. It's more about doing the mechanics and surviving. On a fight like that, if it comes down to it, you could just say, well, let's just take another healer. Blessing of Wisdom should not be for the Arcane Mage, because there are some Arcane Mages who are gnomes. Now, I also know that due to some massive oversight on Blizzard's part, while they were busy designing that monstrosity Cataclysm where they ruined all my level 1 to 60 content, they also introduced gnome healers. Only one of those classes can be a gnome, and you can always come up with some excuse why the priest shouldn't have it. It's not hatred. I don't hate bacteria, but I still wash my hands. You always complained about the mobility of Ret, but you never expect it to be this bad. Well, you certainly don't want to compare it to Rogue, or Warrior, or Demon Hunter, or Monk, or Feral. You can compare it to Death Knights. There it's probably about the same. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Death Knights. I don't know actually. Maybe about the same with Death Knights at the moment. Compare it to Death Knights. That's a fairer thing. Shouldn't really compare anything to gnomes. Really, gnomes are the supermen of the game for raiding anyway. Bring back Emancipate. What for? Almost no downtime on the Outlaw Rogue. Yeah, but an Outlaw Rogue's an Outlaw Rogue, isn't it? I mean, is it actually good? I don't really know. I couldn't say. But is Outlaw Rogue realistically going to be sensible for raiding this time? You know, I haven't seen anyone going, oh yeah, Outlaw Rogue looks good. I mean, you can say there's almost no downtime on a caster because they can constantly spam their things, but they've still got cast times. Being tied for the least mobile melee spec doesn't make you feel any better. Well, no. No, but you know. I mean, ideally what you want is to persuade the raid leader that your single target damage is so good that they should leave you on the boss for everything other than mechanics that have to be moved. Most funny WoW was misdirecting trash packs to the gnomes or mages. I did have a thing actually when they introduced LFR to the game, which is round about the time I came back. And I'd leveled a few characters. When I used to go into LFR and my hunter, at the start of a fight, I did used to misdirect the boss to gnomes. I have to say. Not gnome tanks, obviously. That would just be defeating the purpose. Maybe if Death Knight's grip was the same cooldown as Divine Steed. No, because when you need grip, then you need it, don't you? Because the problem is, if you made the Death Knight grip have a longer cooldown, then you'd need more of them. Because grips are like almost never useful in a mythic... I'm talking about mythic raid. In dungeons, obviously, they're useful every now and then. Well, quite often, I suppose, probably. Because it's a good way of interrupting a mob as well, isn't it? So if you had it on a longer cooldown in that, it's like you need so many grips in a certain amount of time, so you just bring as many Death Knights as are needed to achieve that. I mean, that's what happened on Agrimar. Classic case. So all you do is talk yourself out of a raid spot by suggesting that their grip should have a longer cooldown. All three rogue specs are viable. But if one is better than the rest, like there's no such thing. Like you don't compare a rogue spec with, say, a druid spec or a warrior spec. You compare it with the other rogue specs. It could be argued that outlaw spec has been viable in Legion, but subtlety and or assassination were always better. So that's what people took. You had your patch notes for 1.12 in your Blizzard app. Is that to do with Classic? You feel like I overvalue skill in the video regarding it? I'm pretty sure in the video about it I was talking about the fact that skill, unfortunately... Well, no, there's different types that you've got to bear in mind as well. Like, there are other aspects to skill. It's not just about the rotation. So someone who knows what's coming up and adapts as necessary will do better than someone who doesn't. Apart from anything else, someone who isn't paying attention to what's going on about them is likely to die, and their gear doesn't do them any good when they're dead. Perception matters a lot more for the majority of players. Well, the thing is, for the majority of players, all of this is out the window anyway, because the majority of players will lose so much damage to poor rotation, poor understanding of the fight, poor gearing choices, you know, or just the fact that their gear, even if is the best stuff they've got, they could get access to better gear with a bit of effort or something like that, and they don't do it. You know, there's so many players that lose so much damage in lots of things anyway, that perceptions there I don't think really matter that much. There are probably pockets in the... Well, I know there's pockets in the player base where incorrect perceptions do have a negative effect. Your best mage played Arcane for all of Legion and kept outperforming other mages, regardless of Arcane being the weaker spec. It doesn't mean to say that they wouldn't have done better, had they played a different spec and learned how to play it as well as they, well, I say as well as they played Arcane. Arcane was, you know, not the most difficult to play. Ret have more cooldowns in Kata. Yeah, well, they had lots more of everything in Kata. Some of it was bloated. I think Rets were bloated in Cataclysm. I was quite pleased to see Consecration disappear off the, you know, out of the rotation. There was so much shit there. I mean, admittedly, it wouldn't be as bad now, because the problem then as well is you used up mana, so you'd have to work out, you know, the best way to maximise your use of, because you could actually run out of mana if you used everything. What was the Ret ability in Wrath that did holy damage and bypassed armour? Can't remember. I mean, there's a few abilities that did holy damage, but I don't know which one specifically you'd mean. Do I have a dream skill that's been on my wish list for a while? Yes. Not so much a skill as a talent row, which I keep plugging but then never have it, which is seals. You choose a seal. One of them is basically buffs your abilities. It's like what you'd be. Another seal allows your abilities to do less damage, but they splash damage. So in other words, it's an AoE seal. And another seal is like a battle healer seal, where again, your abilities do less damage, but they also do healing around you. In other words, it'd be a bit like being able to spec as a discipline priest, where you do damage and you do healing, so you're like a half a DPS and half a healer. You know, the hybrid. That would be my dream set of skills, but they won't do it. Well, when you say you'd argue no mage spec is really difficult to play, I mean, you know, difficulty is subjective anyway. Anything is easy once you've practiced it enough. It's like they say, what is it, like the 10,000 steps to expertise or some nonsense like that. It's not nonsense. I mean, if you practice anything enough, then what was a difficult skill becomes an easy skill. But some take more steps, shall we say, to master than others. If Consecration, and also have more of an effect, because that's the other key thing. Sometimes, like what has been noted with a lot of the BFA specs is you can spend a lot of time mastering a spec, but you might get 1% more damage out of it than someone who's just doing it at a mediocre level. At which point is it really worth it? Not really. If Consecration is the best talent, you're just going to play something else. Oh no, but you have to be aware that just simming it on a patchwork fight, consider movement. You do have to consider movement. It's not as bad for movement as it has been in Legion, because it does its damage over a shorter window. But you also don't want to plonk it down and then have stuff move out of it immediately. It was a talent when you use wings, you bypass 50% of armor. Oh, okay. I vaguely remember something like that. But also at the time, if you use bubbles... No, hold on. Before they introduced... Because Avenging Wrath at one point caused forbearance, didn't it? Because before that point, you could use Avenging Wrath inside bubble. And I think the first thing they tried... Was it... At one point, they introduced forbearance on Avenging Wrath. But there was another time where they just had... If you were inside Divine Shield, sorry, your damage was halved or something. I can't remember when those happened. Holy Wrath did do holy damage, but didn't it... it's not likely to have caused carnage in PvP. Well, it's not a case of missing seals as much. I agree that the way seals worked before was not good. But seals and auras are a key part of the Paladin class fantasy. And they talk about class fantasy all the time, so why did they remove two of the key features of the Paladin class fantasy? So the way you do it, like obviously the way seals and auras used to work was shit. Okay, fine. Design a better system. You think the AoE talent is going to depend on the frequency of ads? Well, you can sim for things like that. That's straightforward. The problem with Wake of Ashes is being on a longer cooldown and not being the sort of thing you really want to save unless it's just for an Avenging Wrath. You know, let's say ads came every minute. That wouldn't be any good for Wake of Ashes. You'd be better off with Consecration. In theory. All of the things being the same, that is. Oh yeah, Armor Penetration, I remember. There was an enchant for that as well, and a trinket. You miss Exorcism. Blade of Justice is just physical exorcism. That's the way I think of it. Blade of Justice is exorcism. You liked Seal and Aura switched in PvP. I'm not a huge fan of like constantly rotating things like that. I don't mind whether or not you... That's why I talk about seals as being talent choices as opposed to things you rotate around in a fight. I don't necessarily feel that you should be able to change seals in a fight. You know, if you can't come up with a good system of that, I'm quite happy for it just to be a talent row. Seal of this, seal of that, seal of the other. You know. All with like, all affecting the mode you're in. Like one for single target, one for AoE, one for battle healing mode. That is what I would have liked. Well, according to Blizzard, there's no such thing as mid-table in a way because everything is perfectly balanced. And where you are in the table only depends on where you are alphabetically. But of course, some will have their niche situations, because that's another thing they'll say. They'll say, oh, well, each class has its situation where it will be the best. It will shine. But they don't... You notice, because they never have to say any of these things in an interview, they never have to answer the follow-up question, okay, can you go down the list of every class and say in which situation it shines then, please? Because that would likely have them in and ahhing. But you never know. I mean, Legion was a very good expansion for Ret Paladins. Obviously, Tomb of Sargeras was not, but that aside, the rest of the expansion was perfectly good. What amount of... There is no amount of haste you can recommend. You have to just sit... Every time you get gear, you have to just sim what the best combination of your gear is. There is no magic number. There isn't for BFA, there wasn't for Legion. You know. You'll just know that haste is likely to sim quite high for a while. But that doesn't mean to say that, let's say you've got some wrists that have, say, crit versatility on it, and you get some other wrists that have haste something else on it, that it would be an upgrade. You have to sim it. Why would anyone prefer Exorcism over Blade of Wrath? Hang on a minute. What am I missing here? Oh, for Exorcism. Oh, okay. I mean, again, it was an iconic ability. The only thing I can think of with Exorcism, because when they got rid of it but then brought in Blade of Justice, my initial thought was, well, that could have just been Exorcism. They could have just changed Exorcism to having a 12-yard range and generating 2 holy power. But of course, Blade of Justice is physical. So I imagine there was some desperate reason why they needed to change our balance of physical to holy damage. I don't know why. Because the majority of our damage is still holy. The vast majority is still holy. In fact, is it? Hold on, let me just check. Hold on, I've got a log of a fight from last night. Let me just quickly count up. So, physical, 12.5, 21, 27, So on a fight last night, just a random fight, picking on the logs, 27% of my damage was physical. Which is more than actually it has been in Legion. So I guess there's some reason why they want us to be about a quarter physical and 3/4 say holy. When you buff kings, does it absorb damage right away? Yeah, it does. Well, you say right away. I don't know. There might be a fractional delay. But yeah, it puts a buff on you immediately. Could Paladins with a mouse over macro cast it on raid members taking huge boss damage instead of one player the whole fight? The thing is, only Retribution Paladins have Blessing of Kings. And I don't know how many Retribution Paladins you would have in your raid for it to make a difference. However, I suppose, in theory, you could. But you would probably need quite a lot of Retribution Paladins to add up to a decent Absorb Shield. You're probably far better off letting the healers deal with them. But in theory, yes, okay, let's say you had 5 Ret Paladins in your raid and you could persuade them all to waste a global cooldown to save. As long as it's not a gnome, then maybe it would do some good. I can't rule it out, shall we say. Crusader Strike is lackluster. I don't know. I mean, it's just a low priority builder. It's if you think of Crusader Strike as a filler, I think it's all right. I'm okay with Crusader Strike. The problem is, if you've got a long enough memory, you'll remember back to when Crusader Strike was a beast of an ability. When Crusader Strike was first introduced, it was the terror of Arathi Basin for me. Because as soon as the pre-TBC pre-patch came out, I was in Battlegrounds using my Crusader Strike to completely mess up even Tier 3 warriors. Do I use Hammer of Wrath or... Hang on a minute, what? Hammer of Wrath or Crusader Strike? Hammer of Wrath would have a higher priority than Crusader Strike if you're talking about priority. But it doesn't have as high a priority as, say, Judgment or Blade of Justice, say. So Hammer of Wrath is like, you've got Blade of Justice, Judgment, and then if you can use Hammer of Wrath, you'd use Hammer of Wrath. Assuming you wouldn't overcap, of course. Vanilla, you sat in Stonehearth Bunker in GM gear. What, in Alterac Valley? With Crusader Strike and Seal of Command. It was, you know... I mean, I would have had better gear than GM gear, to be fair, because I would have had Nax and AQ DPS gear, you know. But still, it was a beast, and then they nerfed the hell out of it. They over-nerfed it as well. They over-nerfed it. Right. Only one buff of Kings and Wisdom could be used at a time. That's right. Oh, no, but from each Paladin. But if you've got multiple Paladins, they can all put multiple Kings on the same player. A player can receive more than one Kings. It's just that each Ret Paladin can't give more than one. They do stack. I mean, it'd be weird because they'd be slightly out of sync with each other, but it doesn't matter. They would, in theory, stack. The issue is that most raid groups don't have that many Ret Paladins. I suppose you might get more in a normal or heroic raid. But then you also have to consider the amount of coordination. Is it really worth, in a normal or heroic raid, having a specific tactic whereby 5 Ret Paladins all decide to put their Blessing of Kings at an order on a player? Wisdom stacks as well. Wisdom does stack. It's just, again, you generally don't have enough players to put it on someone because it's not a Paladin ability, it's a Ret Paladin ability. 20 Paladin Mythic group. I don't think that would be sensible. Unless you can burst the boss down during one thing of wings, because, again, you would all die. Divine Purpose on Inquisition, you'll have to sim it, but there are people who are having Divine Purpose sim higher than Inquisition, but it will very much depend. You'll have to keep simming it, I'm afraid. See, that's the problem with Blizzard actually tuning talents or bringing out talents where you can balance them. It means that it can depend. So you'll have to consider the nature of the encounter you're planning on using it on and what sims say. They do get used. You need to try it again. Well, I can show you because I have a log of one. Let's have a look. I need to find a fight from last night where we had both Paladins in. Here we go. Resources. I'm going to have to calculate something though. 1 minute. Let me see. Well, I've got a log, so it's easy to check. Well, I'm going to need to load up. I need to do a quick calculation as well, though. Five minutes. Oh, bugger. What have I done? I've done a thing. Oh, actually, I don't think I even have to calculate it. Basically, hold on. Okay. So, in fact, I just read the numbers out. I don't even have to do a calculation. It's not even close. In a 3-minute 40-second fight, the priest who had 2 wisdoms on him gained 41,600 mana in a 3-minute 40-second fight. Now, later on, when I was the only Ret there, so he had 1 Blessing of Wisdom on him. A 5-minute fight, so that's a longer fight. So if they don't stack, he should have gained more mana from it. But he only gained 29,800. So he was getting more use out of a double stack of it, definitely. That's from the raid testing last night. So it's working. I mean, I've got that from a log from last night, and they're getting extra use out of it. So I don't know what to tell. I don't know what tests you've done. What you need to do is log these things. You can't just try and do a funny thing in game because your notifications may not be telling you the right information. You've got to log these things. I've just looked at a log comparing that and that. And it's definitely stacking. It's stacked before as well. But anyway, it certainly stacks now. Right, what have I missed? We'll be coming towards the end, by the way. This is actually the longest time that I've done a live Ret Q&A, and it's actually carried on for 2 hours without us talking about all sorts of other shit. But I don't know whether this is because of the YouTube effect or what. Your disc used to like having 3. Greedy beggar. I mean, who even has 3 Ret Paladins in a raid? I've never seen that. Well, I have seen. I have, but still. But anyway, we will call it an end there. I'm certainly not going on more than 2 hours because it is going to be starting to get in hot. Well, it already is. So thanks for coming on, all. I will... When I'm going to see, I don't know. Oh, the next one will be the Azeroth review on Tuesday, which is more general stuff, of course. So thanks for coming on, all. I hope you got the answers you want. If not, I will put this up on YouTube, of course, later. People can always ask things down before. If any sort of new... Obviously, next week I'll do just a general Ret vlog again. So if anything transpires from the tuning on the Azerite traits, I'll update there as well. So, yes, have a good night, everyone, and I will see you